For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to StratNews Global. I'm Nitin Gokhale. On our daily evening show, The Gist, we're going to discuss the situation in Bangladesh and its implications for the upcoming elections in 2023 that country is going to face. And to discuss all that with me is Ramanathan Kumar, a former Special Secretary of the Research and Analysis Wing and someone who has served in Bangladesh almost a decade ago, but who has since then kept a watch, kept observing the situation in Bangladesh and the neighborhood, and someone who's very qualified to talk about what are the implications of the whole situation in that country as well as the fallout for India. Welcome to this program, Mr. Kumar.
Thank you very much, Nitin. A great pleasure as always to be with you on The Gist.
Thank you. The situation, as you now must have already observed and as we read and view on various media channels, the reports coming in from there, there have been large rallies, protest marches by the opposition in Bangladesh, and it is being now seen in certain quarters in the West and otherwise as something that is symptomatic of the so-called growing unpopularity of the Sheikh Hasina government. How do you see these protests and these marches that are going on there?
Well, I think these the pre-election noise that builds up is really an integral part of the Bangladeshi political landscape. And it is not that this is happening for the first time. This kind of build-up has taken place many times in the past, irrespective of whichever party is in power and whichever is in the opposition. It's happened in 1996, it's happened in 2001, it's happened in 2006, 14, you name it. So I wouldn't really sort of read too much into all this. I mean, I think I would be surprised if this kind of build-up did not take place. So it's almost as if the clarion call has been sounded for the next elections, which are to take place in January of 2024, if I'm not mistaken. I think there has been some announcement by the Election Commission. So exactly a year from now, and it's par for the course, if I may say so.
It's part of the noisy democracies that Indian subcontinent has.
Absolutely. I think noisy democracy is very well put. Bangladesh is a noisy and a vibrant democracy.
That's encouraging to know because there used to be doubts, say 20 years ago, about whether democracy will survive in Bangladesh. That fortunately is behind the people in Bangladesh.
Correct. I think democracy has struck very firm roots in Bangladesh. There may be democracies, of course, not a perfect form of government, with the exception that all other forms of government are more imperfect. So I think the days of military interventions and all are long past in Bangladesh, and it's very encouraging to see democracy taking such deep roots in Bangladesh.
And one sort of factor that seems to have changed in the thinking of the opposition, that is the BNP, is not to boycott political activity or not to, maybe going forward, I don't know what they will do for the elections itself, but that they are trying to reinvent themselves despite their leaders not present. Looks like the government has no objection really to the opposition being there in Bangladesh.
That is correct. In fact, in 2014, the BNP, if you recall, they boycotted the election.
Correct.
And that didn't help them in any way. I mean, life continued as usual. It would have been good if the Bangladesh Parliament had an opposition party, but life didn't stop. So I think they will not possibly make the same mistake again. They have their own demands, which I'm sure we can discuss
Yes.
as we go along.
Sure. So now coming to Bangladesh situation itself in terms of economy, in terms of social unrest, or even social fault lines there. I was just reading this morning in the papers. One of the organization has been at the forefront, which is not a political party. One of those Islamic outfits. Which the government is trying to pick up the leaders, and sort of radicalization is one of the major challenges there. But economy is also a big challenge in Bangladesh. How do you see the current situation there?
Well, as far as the economy is concerned, Bangladesh has really performed extremely well. In fact, a few weeks ago, there was a report by the Boston Consulting Group that Bangladesh is on course to become a $1 trillion economy. And the prediction is that they will reach there by 2040, if not earlier. And the economy has grown at a healthy rate of 6.4% or thereabouts for the past 6 years. Right. And there are many success stories in Bangladesh. The BCG report that I talked about, it lists several key drivers of this stellar economic performance. And although in the present circumstances, of course, there are concerns about inflationary pressures, foreign exchange risks, and so on and so forth. But at the same time, I mean, there's been a very visible growth of several, what are called local economic champions, and the government has played a very positive role. Developmental spending has increased. The private sector has performed well, and so on and so forth. The country has shown a very high degree of economic resilience. I think that's the key thing that stands out for me in that report. Mm-hmm. And this is so clearly, despite some of the stories of gloom and doom that we hear from various quarters, Bangladesh seems to have done several things right and done them pretty well during the past decade or so. Of course, this is not to minimize the challenges or say that there are none. You mentioned radicalization. Right. It is a very serious challenge. There are radical extremist, radical Islamic forces which have always been very active in Bangladesh. Mm-hmm. They were spearheaded, actually, the mother organization, if you recall, yes, was the Jamaat-e-Islami. And of course, after the present government came to power in 2008, the war crimes trials were started, yes, in which the Jamaat had played a very important role. And the many of the prominent war criminals were prosecuted and sentenced to death. Right. And the Jamaat has virtually been dismantled, so to speak, in Bangladesh. But there are a host of other extremist organizations. The Hifazat-e-Islami is one such organization. Yes, I think that is the one that you were mentioning about. So there is absolutely no dearth of such forces. And the antidote to that, frankly, is a vibrant democracy.
And development.
Absolutely. And I think the present government has had its hands full in tackling these challenges. But I think if you do a careful, if you balance the ups and downs, I would certainly see more ups than downs. I'm not saying that there are no downs whatsoever, but definitely in any kind of balance, I think the ups far outweigh the downs.
In the government. Let me come to this question that has been raised by some Western governments, Western NGOs, human rights organizations about the process of election or electioneering in Bangladesh. That for elections to be fair and free, they have been demanding a caretaker government to be appointed and not allow the current government or whichever government is in power to sort of conduct the elections. What's your view on that?
Well, Nitin, I mean, a caretaker government is really not a sine qua non for the functioning of a democracy. The caretaker government has had a rather checkered history in Bangladesh. In 1996, the BNP was against the caretaker government, and the Awami League, fought for it and got one. Then there was a caretaker government in 2001, and also then again in 2006 there was a kind of rather vigorous debate as to who should head that caretaker government. And then of course there was the intervention by the army, the interim government, and then the election was held in 2008. And thereafter, the Awami League or the present government dispensed. There was a constitutional amendment, and the caretaker government was dispensed with. So, therefore, I mean, we don't have a caretaker government in India, and I think so. Therefore, as I said, it's not really necessary for their.
And I think the Western governments or the organizations have no locus standi really to demand that.
That's right, and. Above all, I mean, this is an internal issue of Bangladesh.
Exactly.
It is for the people of Bangladesh to decide whether they want a caretaker government or not. And this is, frankly, it's not an issue that we should really be commenting on.
True, and that's exactly why I think that even the Western governments who are trying to sort of put pressure on the current government in Bangladesh have no real authority or locus standi to really do that.
That's right. I think caretaker governments are really more of an exception rather than the general rule in democracies.
That's why. But let's move on from just internal Bangladesh, just the politics or the economy, and look at the wider security environment and the contribution of Bangladesh, especially this government, the Awami League government, to India-Bangladesh Security Cooperation. You've been part of some of those operations, getting some northeastern insurgent leaders back into India through whatever arrangements. How do you see the current security cooperation and the situation in the Indian subcontinent really, vis-a-vis Bangladesh?
So I think as a national security professional or somebody who focuses on such issues, I would prefer that we keep our focus entirely on matters of this kind, Nitin. I think our security is fundamentally affected by developments in our immediate neighborhood, and Bangladesh figures prominently in that scheme of things. And it's important that we keep our focus on this rather than, delve into issues of caretaker government, the political noise, and so on and so forth. If you, I don't want to belabor the point too much, but it is a fact, I think most of us know this. There was a time in the none too distant past when Bangladesh had emerged as almost a security nightmare for India. In the first decade of this century, say between 2001 and 5 or 6, almost every prominent terrorist incident in India had a Bangladeshi footprint.
Right.
And, whether it is the foiled attack on the Ram Janmabhoomi temple complex in 2005, there was a major incident in Varanasi in 2006.
That's right.
There was a bombing.
The US consulate
Absolutely, the
Calcutta.
Kolkata. There were the Sarojini Nagar bombings, the Diwali Eve bombings in New Delhi in 2005. In all this, there was a Bangladeshi angle to it. And the organizations are all familiar to us. There was a there was a nexus between them, whether it was Lashkar-e-Taiba or Harkatul Jihadul Islami Bangladesh, or even groups like the Hizbul Mujahideen. There was an attack on an Awami League rally in 2004 in which
Many people were killed.
Absolutely, almost the entire Awami League leadership was wiped out, and Sheikh Hasina herself narrowly escaped.
That's right.
And the subsequent investigations showed that all the organizations of concern to us were associated.
Part of that plot, yeah.
And this was also linked to those, if you recall, the arms haul in Chittagong in 2004.
Right.
These weapons were meant to sort of go to the Indian insurgent groups from the northeast on one side, to the jihadi groups on the other, operating both in Bangladesh and in India.
Sure.
And I, for one, am not apologetic at all when I say these things. It is a fact that the dispensation which was there actively worked against our interests. And we do not have to be, in fact, we need to flag this issue and not forget it. I mean, it's not a trivial matter that can be brushed under the carpet.
No.
And we have an institutional memory and we remember these things.
Right.
So from there on to the stark change that came about after, the 2008 elections, we did receive, as you said, a great deal of security cooperation from Bangladesh after that. And while maybe it may not be prudent to go into too many specifics,
that's fine.
The fact of the matter is that India's, dispensation that came into power in Bangladesh made a very valuable contribution to upholding our national security interests, and those are non-negotiable. So we have to take cognizance of that, acknowledge that, and I think keep our focus on upholding those core concerns of ours.
And which I think the Bangladesh government doesn't have to prove repeatedly, because we know their record and their cooperation.
That's right.
So I think India has a task on its hand, certainly. The neighborhood is going to face all the countries in the neighborhood. We've just had elections in Nepal. There are elections due in Maldives. There are elections due in Bangladesh.
Correct.
Around a year's time. But India's focus should always be to see to it that they are secure, those countries.
Absolutely.
And India also gets the benefit of their cooperation.
Absolutely.
So, one final sort of take on what is the future, what does the future look like? Given that Sheikh Hasina is one of their, or maybe the longest serving Prime Minister now, she has focused on development, she has focused on security. She's also balanced relationship between other countries and India, and has never made any bones about being a friend of India. Does that work negatively against her in elections in Bangladesh?
Well, there is a negative sort of connotation to that also, in the sense that there are naysayers also, just in as in other countries in Bangladesh as well. And there are people who try to say that Bangladesh has gone the extra mile to protect India's security interests and hasn't really got anything much in exchange, and so on and so forth. But I think the important point is Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has kept these naysayers and these negative elements at bay, and she is focused on the positivities in the relationship. And I think that really is the way to go forward, irrespective of whoever is in power. I'm not saying that, we favor X party or X leader or Y. But the point is that, in our neighborhood, the security is indivisible.
That's right.
And you cannot have, if one country feels that they can be more secure at the expense of another, that is not the way to go forward. And I think the present the equation between India and Bangladesh has shown that both sides can benefit
It's a
equally.
win-win.
Absolutely.
And I think she is very aware of this, and that's why she is not apologetic about it.
Absolutely.
I think on that note, we must end this program. But thank you very much again for very insightful comments on what's happening in Bangladesh and what we should look forward to. Thank you very much for your time and your effort.
Thank you very much, Nitin.
Pleasure. That was R. Kumar talking about Bangladesh, our neighbor in the east, perhaps India's closest neighbor in the east, and something that we will be watching over the next 12 months with elections due there. But do keep watching StratNews Global. Our social media handles are visible to you on the screen. Please send comments and feedback. That helps us to improve our program and also bring you more content that you wish to see on our YouTube channel and of course on our website. For the time being, it's goodbye.